space, to final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship ORKTOBER. Wow! Welcome back to the room. Let's go fast to old Big Mek here, and it's time for another video for ORKTOBER! And in this one, we are talking about intermediate painting techniques, because before you can go in a golden demon, you should probably start with, like, a bronze garrote. That's right. It is time for another video here in ORKTOBER on The Red Ones Go Fasta, and we are working on our army painting project that we've been working on all month long, which is over 1,500 points of Beast Snaggas that we built back in the winter from the Beast Snagga Stampede Battle Force, as well as the Beast Snagga Army. Had a whole video series on that. Click the link up there. But yeah, this whole ORKTOBER, we've been working on painting them. So when ORKTOBER started, we took all of our built models, we primed them with a zenithal out of a rattle can. We're doing everything very, very simple. No airbrushes, no trickery, no extra people painting, nothing like that. One regular dude with a full-time job, raising four grots, and also making a crazy video every day of the month, but trying to get this army painted. And so far we've done pretty good. We've gotten our skin layers on all of our models. We've gotten a lot of base coating done. We've used some contrast paints for various things, which have all been chronicled in other videos in this series. And today we are going to talk about some more intermediate techniques. Now, what is an intermediate technique? Well, basic technique is just that. It's basic, right? You take paint, you put it on your brush, you put it on the model. That's basic technique. And then you can kind of get into more advanced basics, but still basic things like the zenithal prime, and then using things like contrast paint. It's a single coat solution. You're still just kind of coloring within the lines, so to say. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time. You're painting an army here, right? But then you're going to get to a point where you get your army together and you're going to want to kind of take the next step. And it can be really difficult to take that step, especially when so many of the videos on YouTube or, you know, Patreon, Instagram, things like that are about really, really advanced techniques. And they want to talk to you about wet palettes and blending these colors for hours and hours and hours on a single armor panel. And you're not quite ready for that yet, or maybe it's just not what you want. You want your army to look a little better than what you started with, but not necessarily go enter a competition. You just want to be proud of it. You want to feel good about it. You want to look at it and go like, yeah, I really dig that. And for that, you need some intermediate techniques. So we are going to show you some on the Beast Snagga Army right now. All right, we getting you set up here on the workbench. One last talking to you. We are going to be working on our 10-man Beast Snagga Boys squad, and I'm going to show you a couple of different techniques on them, and we're also going to talk about some vehicle painting techniques on the kill rig. So flip the camera around, we'll get into it. All right, and this is what I'm talking about. This is our Beast Snagga Knob. You could see he is pretty well done for a basic, quick army paint. We did the zenithal prime. We used a contrast paint on his trousers. We used some shades on his skin, threw some base coat on the black belts and the orange bits, used a true metallic metal right out of the bottle for the metal bits, and ta-da, here we are. This is totally acceptable for tabletop. If you want to put your basic material of choice on this and go, it's going to look pretty good. Again, you put it down here, he goes across the battlefield, he looks pretty good. But you pick him up, you get close, and maybe not quite what you're looking at. So first things first, we're going to put a wash on the metallic parts. Now this is going to be a little different than the wash that we did on the skin, because we're actually going to use multiple washes at the same time to get a gradient. Now it sounds complicated, but it's a lot easier than you might think. You're going to use one brush, you're going to use two washes, you're going to go right out of the bottle, right onto the mini, and what you are looking to do is make a gradient where you use the lighter colored wash on the top parts and the darker colored wash on the bottom parts, kind of like our zenithal primer. Now the big trick here is to just be a little intentional with where you are putting the bluing. So for example, here on his bionic arm bit, I want a little bit of blue around a joint, maybe a little bit of blue in there. Same thing with the armor panels, maybe a little in around the scratch areas. Same thing with this iron gob. I just want little bits of it. just enough to give a spot of color without turning the whole thing blue. Do a little bit more than the other spots on the barrel to kind of show a little bit of heat. And with that, I'm happy. Now, before this is even dry, without even cleaning the brush or anything, I'm going to go straight to my Nuln oil. This is a very traditional black wash. Just mix it right on there, and then I'm going to just go ahead and coat that kind of into everything. And you can see some of the blue is dry already, which is great, and some of it is wet, and so it's going to spread around a little, which is totally cool. That's what we want. We want to give it that little bit of kind of natural look to it. We don't want it to look like a spot. We want it to blend. We want it to look like nature. Get all that going on his metallic bits there. Now, even an acrylic wash will reignite the properties and kind of make it spread around a little. So if you have a spot in particular that you really like that is dry, you want to let it really dry before you go and do this so you don't reactivate. Get a little bit there. All right, and that has darkened down our metallics by quite a bit. In fact, if we put him next to one that isn't, you can already see the difference on the blade and the shoulder pad on what that looks like. When you put it down here, again, tabletop height, that little bit of breakup and that little bit of blue, right, really helps tie everything in together, makes them a bit grim dark, brings down the shine, but gives yet another piece of contrast. I wouldn't be an army painting video without a Nuln oil spill. Ugh. You can see I'm applying it extremely liberally everywhere where it's metal, and then using the brush to kind of soak it back up out of spots where it's pooling, or spread it around into other areas, and then go and grab the rest of my metallic bits. Now, if I do get some Nuln oil on non-metallic parts, it's not the end of the world. This dries matte. This is not the gloss one, and it would just provide a little bit of shadow or a little bit of depth to whatever it got on. And yeah, that's all the time I'm spending on each one. It's just that right there. Now on the vehicle, these great big metal armor panels can look quite monochrome with the bolt gun on them, and just that simple little bit of Nuln oil black wash really gets into those different areas and helps bring out that contrast in the armor panels, in between the depths, the breaks in them, and the armor panels themselves. Now, once you get it to this point, what you actually want to do, because this does dry matte and the bolt gun is glossy, is actually take a towel and wipe off the big flat areas. This leaves the oil wash down in the depths, leaves a little bit around the edges to kind of throw some dirt and stuff on there, but gets you your shine and highlight back of the glossiness of the metallic surfaces. Now, when it comes to the vehicles, where you've got these metallic parts here that are industrial gubbins, they're not going to be that shiny in real life. So really douse it on and in there and just let it do its thing. This is not only going to look more realistic, but it's going to pull people's eyes away from that area and to the actual parts of the model you want them to see. I've done the same thing with all the little bits and bobs and pipes and whatnot in here. That's not going to be the main attraction of the kill rig. It should fade into the background. Look at this saw, for example, versus this saw. Now, obviously, we're still a little glossy because it hasn't dried yet, but just getting some black wash on there, just giving it a chance to tone everything down and get into all the little nooks and crannies and give it that grim dark look will really help a lot. Now, if we need to brighten it up later, especially like the edges of the saw, we'll come back in later with a little bit of a dry brush, just like we did on the kill rig itself to start with, in order to get it back up to snuff. Our big squig here is another excellent opportunity to show this in action. This lower part of his jaw isn't going to be that bright. We've dry brushed it a little bit to start with. We're going to put a wash on and just let it get into all of those little nooks and crannies. And again, it's okay if we end up touching skin color a little bit here. It's going to give us a little bit of a line break between that color anyway. And yeah, that is going to help really dial in that lower jaw to be much more realistic and grimdark looking than just the base silver. One spot where this technique really shines is where GW makes all of these crazy looking cuts to make it look like it was cut by a plasma cutter or something like that. Getting the Nuln Oil into all those little grooves really helps sell that effect. Now, shading is not just for skin or metallic parts. You can use it for spot shades as well. In fact, I've talked about these guys being scar boys multiple times over this series. Let's take some Berserker blood shade and put it in the scars and show how just a tiny little bit of a spot shade can really add a bunch of depth to a model and make it look far more detail painted than it actually is. So you see we've got a scar right here on the abdomen. We're going to put the shade right in that scar. And it's, again, you want it to kind of bleed over a little bit. You want it to kind of shade the areas around it. Now, this does not have nearly as much pigment in it as a contrast paint. So when this dries, it's going to be a lot less in your face. But look at that. Now we've got this cool looking scar in his skin, making him look much tougher and more proper. All right, we've got a little piece right here in the chest. We'll do that one. Go ahead and throw some shade inside of his mouth to give him some red. I like to shade around the bottom of the teeth too. It kind of gives you the ideas of gums. You can see that looks quite a bit better. And yeah, just kind of give him a good look. Make sure he doesn't have any other areas that we could do that on, but we could totally do it on the rest of our guys. This arm in particular is going to look really good. It's got a huge welt. We're going to go ahead and do the whole thing there. Let the shade get in there and do its thing. And that's going to add some cool looking contrast and really bring out that scar. The other spot this looks particularly good is where the bionic parts are melded into the skin. You want to run the shade all over the bimarcation point between the green and the metallic, and it's really going to sell that effect that the skin and the muscle is all just inflamed and scarred up with where that operation was done. I've been particularly excited to do this technique to this head right here. It features a split or a cut literally right down the middle of his face, and so you're really going to get the effect sold when you get everything done. And look at that. How cool looking is that guy going to be? All right, again, here we have the nice cool metal and the nice cool green skin, and we're going to put this red shade right in between both of them. Let it pool up on either side and really sell that effect of skin that's just super inflamed with having been introduced to bionic parts. It's going to add some warmth to this model. All right, now we've got our Nuln Oil wash on there. We've got our little bit of blue wash on there, throwing some color and contrast on there. We've done our washes into our scars, given some nice color and contrast into that. Now let's focus on the face. Most orcs have a wide open mouth and some beady eyes. I'm going to show you a really easy way to do this. For this, we're going to need some contrast paint again. We're doing the Flesh Tearers Red. But basically, you're just going to get a little bit going on your brush, and you're just going to jab it right into the mouth there. Just go ahead and get everything, teeth and all, because you're going to come back later and dry brush the teeth with some bone color, and then just kind of carefully get the eye socket. Boom. Now he's got a face. Now he's got red eyes, perfect for an orc, and a red mouth. And when you put him on the tabletop, look at that. Doesn't that look so much better than open green mouth? Super simple, super easy. Do it to all your orcs. All right, next is to take care of the teeth. And using a bright white doesn't make a lot of sense. Orcs aren't exactly known for their oral hygiene. However, using really dark yellow or brown doesn't make sense either, because the whole thing about them is that their teeth are supposed to grow so fast that they can use them for currency. So I find that a nice light tan, pale sand / off-white color I prefer this Tamiya XF55 deck tan, but anything like that will work much better than bright ivory white. Now the trick to painting the teeth is, instead of going vertical with the teeth to try to paint them, is to go horizontal across them and just try to get the teeth with the flat of the brush like that. Boom. Teeth. And again, not going to win you a golden demon, but on the tabletop, you read as a mouth with teeth. It's super easy to do. This is a great intermediate technique to start adding some more detail to your pieces. Don't forget to paint your fingernails, the exposed ones there, just like that. Again, adds a lot of realism, especially from tabletop distance, without being too terribly difficult. And look at our beautiful Scar Boy / Beast Snagga boy. I mean, that is really looking pretty good. And it's really, there's no advanced techniques here. We're not wet blending anything. We are not spending hours and hours and hours and hours. This is quick and dirty, but it looks good. And most importantly, it looks good on the tabletop. And of course, don't forget to paint all your little bones and little bone fragments and little teeth and things like that while you've got this out. And with that, our whole squad is really starting to look pretty good. We just got a couple of more things we can do to get them up to the last little bit. Well, the first one is sponging. I've talked about this a million times on this channel, but I'm just not going to stop because it is so good. You want to get yourself some really cheap closed foam like this, and cut yourself a piece of it that you can use to sponge some silver details on the minis to look like battle damage or chipping. And for this, you're going to want a nice bright silver such as Tamiya X11 Chrome Silver. This is gloss. You do want that difference in glossiness to really sell that this is chipped metal and weathered and not just another highlight. So what you're going to do is take your sponge here. The first couple of hits are going to be very full of paint. So if you want, you can do a couple on the napkin first, get that out of the way. But just start with where you want it most heavily chipped to begin with. So for example, the inside bite of his claw is going to be very chipped. The hook of the chain will be very chipped. And then go from there. We want some pretty heavy chipping on the edges of our boss pull here, as well as our armor panel, and across the face of it. I'm pressing just very lightly. You can press harder for more damage, lighter for less damage, but you're just going to want to kind of put this anywhere where there is metal, whether it's painted or not, to give an effect of having some weathering to it. Look at the shoulder pad, look at the backpack, the boss pull. It just looks so much more realistic, and it's super, super simple and super just easy to do. And with that, we have a squad. So all of them have had their orange details painted, and then the silver chipping done with the sponge. The only other step I did is I went back onto the bone areas and just did a little bit of Seraphim Sepia wash just on the very edges, or like the bottoms, like you can see here. Just let it sink down in there. And that was it. Same way we did our red or the magenta in the scars. That's it. That's the squad. And realistically, there's not a whole lot of time in this squad at this point. And all they have left is bases and maybe some weathering pigment. And that's it. This squad is done. I have the first 10 Beast Snagga boys completed, and I'm really happy with the way they turned out. They look like proper Scar boys. And yeah, just having that dark metal armor, showing off all the metal plating, showing off all of the metal prosthetics and cyborg body parts is just so much better than the clean white armored look of Games Workshop's factory paint job. So I highly recommend picking up some Beast Snaggas because they really do look the part. Also have quite a bit done on all of the parts for the kill rig as well as the kill rig itself and our characters, the Werboy and the Pain Boss. I also have the Squiggy starting to come along. But yeah, I do have quite a bit of work still to do on the kill rig, but I'm pretty confident I can get the kill rig done, maybe the characters before the end of October. Otherwise, these 20 boys still need all the steps we've gone over the last couple of videos, and I've barely touched the mounted units. As for answering the question that we set out on this whole video series to do, which is how long does it take to paint an army? I think I could confidently say about a month. If I was not making videos every single day of October, and if I was not getting distracted by starting other hobbying projects, such as doing the every kit as an orc kit and turning a Drukhari Raider into a Chinork Warhammer, I'd have a lot more time for the painting. And I really like, judging by the amount of time that I've recorded doing the ones that are finished and the amount of times I've worked on the other stuff and just kind of looking at what's left, I really do think that you could totally get 1,500 points done to a tabletop standard in about a month. Again, going off of the recommendations that I did a couple of videos ago, painting every day, skipping over some details, not being afraid to make some changes, and other tips like that. So yeah, we'll definitely keep working on the army even after October closes, just to make sure we finish this out and show you what it's like to get the army done. But I'm really pumped with how that squad turned out. I've always been on the fence about the Beast Snaggas. When they first came out, like, I thought they were really cool for a second, and then everyone was like, oh, they're feral. And like, yeah, there's Squiggies again after not having Squigs for the longest time in 40k. And so I was kind of soft on them. I ended up not building that army, even though I owned the Beast Snagga army box, until 10th edition came around, until I got the Beast Snagga Stampede. It really took seeing other ones in person to get me on board. Specifically Warboss Kins, who did that amazing cyborg mega mecha squigoth thing that we covered a couple of videos ago. His Beast Snagga boys, specifically Squighog Riders, are really, really fantastic. And it really made me interested in the models. And once I got a good look at the models and just saw how much cybernetic parts they had, how much armor plating they had, and how much they really fit the Scarboy persona, I was all in. I would love the new Orc boys to be not monopose and to be more like these kits. These were really nice kits. They went together very well. I appreciated the semi like kit bashery of them, like within themselves, meaning like certain shoulder pads just swap back and forth, all the heads swap back and forth, things like that. Just having those options is really nice. But yeah, that's where we are with our Beast Snagga army for painting it. I hope you picked up some tricks on the intermediate stuff today. As you saw, it really elevates those guys from kind of ho-hum to like really looking grimdark and tabletop nice. And it really doesn't take much effort or skill. I mean, it's some washes and a sponge. Like, that's the whole point. You can pick up skills, you can learn things, you can make your army look better, and you don't need an airbrush. You don't need to spend 30 hours wet blending each miniature. You don't need to buy 700 paints of the latest paint line. Some of the paints I'm using here are literally 20 years old. If it works, it works. Like, you don't have to go crazy in order to get decent results. It's more about your technique and you looking at the model and putting it together in a way that makes sense than it is about anything else. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, show me some love down below with a like or a comment. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to talk about it more or see like some still photos, close-ups, things like that, join our Discord. There is a link in the description. It is completely free as usual. All right, I got to get back to work making more October videos because tomorrow there's going to be a whole nother one. So until then, Wagon!